NFL Week 8 Thursday Night Football has the Minnesota Vikings at the LA Chargers. LA, 2.5 or 3-point home faves as we sit here early in the week. Total 43.5. We'll talk about what's happened to the Chargers in the last 4 weeks or so, whether or not the Vikings can lean on some positive takeaways from that loss in Week 7 to the Eagles. And of course, we'll break down the best bet for this game as well. Ninja here with Tony Farmer. Welcome to Oddshark. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit that subscribe button if you do not do so already. Let us know your favorite Week 8 Thursday Night Football bet in the comments section below. Tony, I thought the Vikes actually played quite well in Week 7. Just lots of stuff didn't really go their way. A couple of touchdowns pretty much robbed from them. A couple of really bad calls, the holding, the incompletion, just didn't get the bounces on Sunday. But can the Vikes take a little positivity away from that Week 7 loss against the champs and carry it into this game against a slumping Chargers team, Tony?
I think so. There was a lot to hang their hat or hang their helmet on. They had more than 8 more minutes of time of possession than their opponent. They had less penalties. They had 8 more first downs than the Eagles did, and they were better on 3rd and 4th down in the game. A lot of times those things are a recipe for winning, but the 2 reasons they lost that game last week: 1, they were terrible in the red zone, 1 of 6 conversions. And 2, the 2 interceptions thrown by Carson Wentz, 1 of which was a pick 6. So the good news, to answer your question here, is you're feeling like we're a team, if you're the Vikings, if we can clean these things up, we're going to be all right. And these are correctable things, right? As a head coach, you can't make your wide receiver run faster than 100%. You can't make your quarterback throw the ball farther overnight, but you can cut down on the turnovers by schematically making changes, by changing play calling decisions, by asking your quarterback to take less chances. These are all things that can be cleaned up, and I think that is exciting if you're a Vikings fan, because if they can, they're going to be in a pretty good place.
So, JJ McCarthy injured, of course. His timetable, Tony, was 6 weeks, which would put his scheduled return in Week 9. But do the Vikings need to rush this guy back, Tony? The Vikings, I mean, you mentioned some numbers there before from last week, but one of the worst teams in the league in EPA per play on offense. The DVOA numbers stink on that side of the ball as well. That said, they are one of the best overbets in the league. But do they keep McCarthy on schedule, or do we see Wentz for this one?
I think because Wentz is playing so terribly right now, these last couple games in particular, it encourages you to want to rush JJ McCarthy along a little bit because he can't be much worse. Wentz has had 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions his last 2 weeks. He had the 3rd worst turnover-worthy play percentage before this last week. I'm excited to see what the updated numbers are over at ftnfantasy.com. I think that number probably got worse. So because your starting quarterback is playing worse, I think you look to the guy that you drafted and you say, hey, we drafted him for his ceiling. If he plays anywhere near his ceiling in this game, it's going to be better than how Carson Wentz played. So I think that's probably the move at this point. But remember, there were conspiracy theories when Wentz first became the starter and McCarthy got hurt. There was a lot of people saying he didn't look hurt. Maybe this is just the Vikings saying he's not ready yet, and they don't want to admit that he's not ready, and they don't want to hurt this guy's ego, so they're going to blame it on an injury. I don't know if that's true or not. Who knows? But I don't think he can play much worse than Wentz is right now.
Through 3 weeks, the Chargers were 3-0, atop a competitive AFC West. Herbert high up on the MVP odds board. Since then, Tony, losses to the Giants and the Commanders and the Colts, barely squeaking past a terrible Dolphins team. They haven't covered a spread in 5 weeks. They are 0-2-1 against the spread at home in LA. What happened to this team, Tony?
I think, one, you got to remember what the Chargers' identity was coming into the season. They were going to bully you in the trenches, and they were going to run the ball down your throat. Well, now they're down their top 2 running backs, and their offensive line is a mess. So I think they have a bit of an identity crisis on top of their struggles. Like, who are we? How do we win games? That sort of thing. 2, their defense is playing really bad right now. They give up 27 points to the Commanders, 27 points to the Dolphins, 38 points to the Colts. I was thinking, hey, last week, you get Khalil Mack back, you get Denzel Perryman back. We're going to see some improvement on that defense. No, like I said, 38 points to the Colts. So they've got to figure some things out on the defensive side. And I don't know if you saw Jim Harbaugh's press conference after the game on Sunday, but he looked like a child that was caught in a lie because reporters are like, hey, are you seeing improvement from this team? He's like, yeah, we're improving. And they're like, oh, really? Like, can you give us some examples for Sunday of how you've improved? And he just talked in circles. He didn't really have an answer of how this team's improving. I think that's because they're not. They're regressing. They're struggling because of the injuries and the things that I mentioned, but they got to clean up that defensive side as well.
Yeah, a Harbaugh coach team that is playing anything but Harbaugh football. And you talked about one of those facets, which is the running game, which is where I want to get into next. Omarion Hampton, a bit slow out of the gate in his rookie year, but he's been out for a couple weeks now. Of course, Najee Harris out longer term. So the Chargers are leaning on the likes of Kamani Vidal, Hassan Haskins. Are you seeing anything positive from the current state of the Chargers running game, especially considering running back prop markets for this week?
All right, I'm going to start with some positives, but I'm going to trickle and end probably on a very negative note to this question. So from a positive standpoint, if you go and look at that highlight of Ladd McConkey's big touchdown against the Dolphins, just watch nobody but number 28 on the play. That's Haskins. He has two beautiful blocks that set that play up. So this dude's playing hard. And like Baker Mayfield-esque, obviously a different position, but in terms of how gritty he is and the maximum effort, that's what you're getting out of this guy. I just don't know that the talent is there for him. For Vidal, he had a really good game against the Dolphins, and you kind of get your hopes up if you're a Chargers fan and you get excited. And then, he comes crashing down to earth against the Colts. So you say, you know what, that big game against the Dolphins was probably because it was the Dolphins, right? We saw Rico Dowd have over 200 yards against that team on the ground as well. So I think it's a situation where these guys are third and fourth string running backs because that's exactly what they are. And they would be on the practice squad on some other teams in the NFL. So that's just sort of the reality of the situation.
All right, folks, if you are looking for a little extra edge in your daily sports betting, you've got to check out Prop Professor. This app drops hundreds of plus EV bets every single day, giving you a real shot at finding long-term profit instead of just guessing. You can sort through plays across the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, and plenty more, all backed by data and not vibes. So, for example, you might see something like over 44.5 at plus 7% EV for the Thursday night game. Just one of the many sharp plays you'll find inside the app. Plus, it's got tools for arbitrage betting and even a fantasy optimizer, so you can cover all of your angles. And if you want to give it a try, use the promo code OddsSharkPP at checkout, and you'll get 25% off your first month. They've got a few different subscription options as well, so pick the one that fits your style and start betting smarter with Prop Professor. Let's look at this game here. I mentioned it off the top, but at FanDuel, the Chargers are 2.5-point home favorites here. Total is now 43.5. The under minus 115. The Chargers minus 144 on the money line. The Vikes coming back at plus 122. What are you liking for this game, Tony?
Yeah, you mentioned the Chargers minus 2.5 over at FanDuel. There's a lot of minus threes in the market right now, so I'm grabbing that 2.5. It's minus 112 right now. Bet it already this morning. I'm just going to trust Jim Harbaugh to bounce back in this spot. We saw some inspired efforts this weekend, like you saw, or even throughout the week. We saw the Bengals have an inspired effort against the Steelers because their back was against the wall. You saw the Cardinals, even though they lost that game to the Packers. You got more out of that team, I think, because they were in a desperate situation and their back was against the wall. This Chargers team has now lost 3 of 4. The game that they won, they didn't look great in. This is a back against the wall, what is your identity type situation for Jim Harbaugh here, and I'm going to trust him in this spot to cover the 2.5.